Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who was tasked with forming the new government, has only 2 days left to clinch a deal, or the country could face another round of elections for the first time in history. If this happens, who will gain and who will lose? Here to talk about the breakdown in coalition talks and the possibility of elections are Rabbi Dov Lipman, a former member of Knesset with the Yesh Atid party, Rabbi Dov Halbertal, former head of the office of the Chief Rabbi of Israel, Naftali Ben Simon, former senior journalist and Likud party member, and Professor Yossi Yonah, former member of Knesset with the Labor Party. Welcome. So, Rabbi Lipman, let's start with you. You've just come from the Knesset. Are we headed for new elections?
The atmosphere there certainly feels that way. There's already discussions about what date would be the proper date for the elections. There's always a possibility of something last minute, but everything that I've seen indicates that Avigdor Lieberman cannot give up on the tree that he has climbed up to, and therefore I don't see any way for them to solve it. And that's why the coalition has come together and said we have a majority and we're voting for the dispersal of the Knesset to head to elections.
So let's talk about the main issue holding up the coalition talks, the Haredi enlistment bill. Do you foresee any compromise on behalf of Lieberman?
Yes, it can be, and he will tell everybody that he won. It's a small thing. I have to tell one thing. There is the gap. There is no such a big difference in between the Haredim and Lieberman. It's more a thing of tactic. Even let us assume that Lieberman will win, he will not withdraw. Let us assume it. You think that even one yeshiva bocher, as we say, one student in the yeshiva, will be enlisted to the army? The answer is no. I know it's a moral problem, but practically nobody will be enlisted with the ideas of Lieberman or the Haredim, ideas. There is no difference, and he knows it. It's only, a way of tactic way of trying to get Netanyahu annoyed. I think there will be a government in Wednesday. I think so. He will, he will say something. They will get some compromise, and he will tell that he now is, because of his responsibility towards the nation, and and everything. He decided that he will compromise in some way. It's not a big compromise, and he won. But the main issue in this debate is that there is no difference in between the two parties, no real difference.
I see you nodding along, yes.
Before talking about the core issues, I will suggest to the partners of the coalition, if they want to form a government, to make it very close to a cardiology department in a hospital, because in Israeli politics, everything becomes a thriller. And until the last moment, nobody will know exactly if we will have a government or no. And now, at this time, the Knesset is voting for a new election. But in my opinion, something really deep is happening in the way that people like Lieberman and others are looking the partnership with the ultra-Orthodox in the government. It's something much more deeper than how many soldiers will come from the ultra-Orthodox party or no. So I think maybe it will be a government, but it will be a nightmare.
Mm-hmm. Professor Yonah, some say that this is all just posturing, and that at the end of the day, there will be a coalition deal. What's your take on this?
Well, I do agree with my colleagues here that the discussion is about, symbolic gains and not material gains. And what we have here is a situation whereby I do believe that all potential partners to the coalition government want to have a coalition government, but at the same time, they want to get the most out of the negotiations. So if they would if we're going into no elections, it would be because things would get out of control, miscalculations on part of the either Lieberman or either the ultra-Orthodox parties. Now, as to Lieberman, the issue is very, very clear. I mean, as we talked before, well, he is the person responsible for bringing down the government, presenting specific demands. And these are the demands that are on the table, and he owes it to his constituencies. So it is not as if he is upping the ante or raising the stakes. Mm-hmm. The very demands that he put on the table, or the negotiating table at the very beginning, are the same demands that he is now trying to secure. So I think that if there is a possibility whereby there would be some kind of a cosmetic change, and that he can present it as his, victory, and that it would satisfy his constituencies, right? So that is one possibility. Or if he would not get what he wants, and I do believe, given the situation, given the reasons that the elections were held, that he has a point. He has a point. He cannot budge. He just cannot budge because his credibility, his public integrity is being put on the table. And if there would be, at the end of the day, a compromise, it ought to be, I believe so, not because I'm preferring one or another, but I believe that it will be on the part of the ultra-Orthodox parties.
That the ultra-Orthodox would give in.
They would give in, but even when they would give in, and I do agree with what Dov was saying before, it is not about the numbers of Haredi soldiers going to be conscripted to the army. This is not the issue. Mm-hmm. It was not the issue before, Now, this is a very, very sad fact that if Israel would go to elections within the next 3 months, it would be over nothing.
But let's say
the
Israel
Israeli
does.
politics has been taken a hostage by a rabbi that nobody knows who is he, the Rabbi Migur, and he decided for this country that we are going to a new election. Nobody knows who is representing, maybe 50,000 people, no more than that. But, this is something that in 2019, we are behaving like 1419, 500 years ago. So this is something unacceptable that this country will go to another election because that one rabbi decide not to go to a compromise that others, ultra-Orthodox parties, already agree.
But by the way, I want to add here, Naftali, that it is not exactly the point, because I already report yesterday that the rabbi actually entrusted his political leaders to reach whatever compromise they see fit.
Yossi.
But it's terrible what I hear from my friend Naftali.
But this is the reality. The whole political system has been taken hostage by him.
That's their agenda. That's the Haredi agenda.
But what is percentage in the society and why?
80%. 80% admire this rabbi more than Lieberman. You can ask who is Lieberman, not who is the rabbi.
Okay, so I just want to ask, let's say we do go to elections, right? A new Ma'ariv poll from today just showed that if we did go to elections, the right-wing bloc would essentially gain more votes. So is this sort of a win-win situation for the right-wing bloc, for Netanyahu?
Well, the possible shame of all of this is that, as I analyze it, we could end up in the exact same place we are today with the same difficulties as we have today. So it's not like you'll see some kind of a major shift. Is it possible? It's possible that perhaps votes that were going to smaller parties that didn't get in, didn't cross the threshold, maybe they'll go to Likud or maybe they'll go to Jewish Home. It's possible. But everyone has to realize that it's very likely that we'll go through this whole whole election process with all the money and all the mudslinging, and we'll end up in the same place, which is why, to me, I actually believe the greatest lesson has to be some kind of electoral reform, where everybody realizes there needs to be a change in the system, where small groups don't have the power to hold an entire country hostage, whichever those groups are, whether it's the religious or whether it's Lieberman. It's absurd that we can have a 80% of the country wanting something else, and it's not able to happen. So hopefully, if we do reach a stalemate and the same place, people will learn that lesson and will actually push for some kind of reform in the electoral system.
That's for
Yes,
sure.
go ahead.
What you mentioned, the polls in Ma'ariv and almost same, more or less the same situation.
Right.
Also after this new coming election, we have a huge political problem, electoral problem, and it will not solve by not this election, not the next election. And of course, it shows that maybe something in the Israeli society is dividing, and Lieberman is creating a new crisis, maybe to change the whole way of our thinking. And this is something that I think Lieberman, as a very clever politician, is thinking that this is the time to change the mindset of the Israeli society.
Okay, final thought, and then we have to wrap up.
We have to talk about the elephant in the room. And the elephant in the room, of course, it is Bibi Netanyahu. Under the assumption that he would be removed from his office, there would not be a problem of forming a coalition government with the blue and white. So there is a possibility for a unity government, that it would break the mold within which we're being now operating for maybe now about more than a decade or so.
Okay, well, gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Thank you.